was diagnosed with chronic uveitis at the age of 8. Previous to this, I was diagnosed at the age of 2 with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis.
Uveitis is an inflammation of the uvea, a structure that consists of 3 different structures within the eye. First is the iris, the colored part of the eye. Second is the ciliary body, which is the muscle within the eye. Third is your choroid, a pigmented layer of blood vessels found behind the retina in the back of the eye.
The first thing that I noticed different in my own vision at, it was about 7 years old, between the ages of 7 and 8, was that I had black dots in my field of vision. I was seeing little black dots throughout my vision. And the teacher at school had also noticed that I was having difficulty seeing the blackboard at that time. So it was through a routine eye exam that the eye doctor, the optometrist, noticed that there was something not right with my eyes. He wasn't sure what it was, but he knew, even though he couldn't see fully to the back of the eye with his equipment, he knew that there was something going on, and forwarded me on to the care of a retinologist, a retinal specialist, an ophthalmologist as well. And from there on in, it was kind of a whirlwind till about the age of 14, when things finally got better.
Anterior uveitis refers to the anterior structures within the uvea. During an episode of uveitis, the ciliary body becomes inflamed and starts to leak small white blood cells and protein into the anterior chamber. Under examination, your eye doctor will look for white blood cells floating in the aqueous humor, which is the clear fluid found in the front of the eye. During an examination, your doctor will check your eye pressure and dilate the pupil of your eye to be able to see to the back of it.
You know, it was treated quite rapidly. Uveitis it can very easily lead to blindness if not treated properly. So the retinal specialist that I was under the care of chose to use steroid injections into my eyes to try and calm the really, out of control raging fire. It was, my eyes were full of inflammation and something needed to be done. So I was booked for steroid injections into my eyes. Because I was only 8, I was put under anesthetic for that procedure, which is, a very simple procedure, but try and convince an 8-year-old that injections into her eye are not going to hurt, yeah, forget about it. So the doctor, like I say, discussed and with my parents, and the decision was made to put me under anesthetic for that procedure. From there on in, it was eye drops, prednisolone, and other drops to take down the inflammation in my eye. I remember many times growing up where my mom would have to do my eye drops every hour through the night as well. And, at its max, it was every hour. It was about 4 times a day once it was calmed. But every hour was the maximum, yeah. So I had complications, I suppose you could say, or side effects of the prolonged inflammation in my eye. And that was that a cataract began to form, not just from the inflammation, but also as a result of the medication that was being used to control the inflammation. It was kind of a catch-22, because if the doctor didn't treat the inflammation, I would have inevitably gone blind. The same token, the medication that was used also took my vision for a period of time. I think it was only a couple years after I was diagnosed with uveitis that I was then diagnosed with cataracts on both lenses of my eyes. And at that time, it was customary to leave the cataract until it was what was called ripe. So once that cataract became thick enough, they then removed not just the cataract, but also the lens from my eye. So on top of the cataract, I believe at the age of, it was around 10 years old as well, I had my first bout of acute angle closure glaucoma.
Acute angle closure glaucoma is a serious medical condition that makes the pressure inside your eye increase rapidly. It can rise within a matter of hours. It happens when the fluid in your eye can't drain the way it normally would. Fluid drains out of your eye through a system of canals. These canals live in the mesh between your iris and your cornea. When your iris and cornea move closer together, it closes the angle between them. When this happens suddenly, it's called an acute attack and is very painful.
Of course, acute means, it only happens once. It's not chronic like my uveitis, where I've had that my entire life and will continue to have it for my entire life. And the ophthalmologist then had to open that channel up because my intraocular pressure became so high. So it's like leaving a faucet on. So when that channel becomes plugged, it inevitably causes your eye pressure to go through the roof, as it causes extreme fluid buildup in the back of your eye, which can lead to damage of the optic nerve. It can lead to scarring. It can lead to all kinds of nasty things, and inevitably blindness. So the ophthalmologist had to go in and use a YAG laser and shoot these beams of laser into my eye to open up a new hole, essentially, to let fluid circulate through. Yeah, it was extremely, extremely painful. I would get massive headaches when these acute angle closure glaucoma attacks would happen. The worst headache I have ever had by far. I became extremely sensitive to light. My vision, of course, got blurry as well. And if it wasn't treated rapidly, scarring and damage occurred to my optic nerve. So, as a kid, I went through that 3 times in the right eye and twice in the left. The right eye I do have scarring in because I left it a little too long before I said something to my mom. How I let that go, I don't know, but I did. I was hoping, I guess, that it wasn't glaucoma, that it would go away, and it didn't. I am still legally blind in the right eye. So from the ages of about 11 to 14, I was legally blind from the cataracts. How would I describe what it was like? Well, it was kind of like looking through Vaseline, I guess would be one of the ways I would describe it. It was like looking through fog. But eventually it got to the point where, the teachers were enlarging my schoolwork so that I could see it. So I was also helped out at that time by the CNIB, the Canadian National Institute of the Blind. And they were fantastic in providing vision aids for me. I was given enlarged textbooks that were, looking back on it, I would say they were probably about a 20 size font, maybe a bit bigger than that. But towards the end, when it was almost, we were so close to removing that those cataracts rather, off my eyes, I would also use a magnifying glass on top of the 20 size font because it just wasn't big enough. I couldn't see it. Audiobooks were used at the time. So this would have been in the early 90s that this was taking place. And I was given a device that it was like a huge TV screen, and I remember it must have had a camera of sorts on it, and it would enlarge things and put it up on the screen. So I'd slide my books underneath this camera on a tray, and then the camera would magnify it up onto this large TV screen. Yeah, so I would slide these big, massive 20 font size books underneath this apparatus to enlarge it. And yeah, I stayed that way for most of grade 6 and into grade 7. I remember it was in grade 7 that I underwent the surgery and I had the cataracts and the lens removed from my eye. And then I was given very, very thick glasses. So to this day, I still no longer have lenses in my eyes. That lens capsule has remained empty, and it will forever, because if I were to have an artificial lens put in my eye, the same thing would happen. I would inevitably end up with cataracts, even on that artificial lens. So, or definitely, even if it wasn't a cataracts, definitely end up with glaucoma again. Well, I spent, as I say, at least 3 years legally blind and in a fog, and I just remember so much at that point in my life not wanting to be different from other kids. It was really important to me that I not stick out because of my uveitis, because of my rheumatoid arthritis. I didn't want to be any different than any other kid. And at one point, a teacher's aide was brought in to be with me 24/7 while I was at school. And, this person would take notes or read aloud to me for assignments. Well, nothing sets you apart faster and more obviously than by having an adult right by your side, and that was very upsetting to me. I remember, going home and crying and saying, I don't want her there. I don't want this person there. And the decision was made that I would just go forth without an aide, that I would, the teachers and other students would help, because it was so upsetting to me to have this person with me 24/7. Took away my independence, and that wasn't cool at that time for me. I think I adapted extremely well, and that's the thing. Children are extremely resilient, and I just learned ways to adapt, to make up for my loss of vision. I was lucky, I suppose, in the sense that I could still navigate. I could still, it was blurry, and reading was extremely difficult. Seeing the blackboard was impossible, but I could still navigate on my own. I could still see things enough, I think the hardest thing at that time was the glaucoma attacks, because they would just kind of come out of nowhere, just boom, happen overnight. And it was, I'd go to bed, say on Thursday, and wake up Friday morning and have an excruciating headache and have no warning that this was going to happen. The ideal way to control uveitis is to control the inflammation in your body. So in my case, it's control the rheumatoid arthritis, and in turn, the uveitis will also be taken care of. So after the age of 14, I started methotrexate. That helped to control the uveitis as well. And then, things like Celebrex came onto the market, and that also helped control inflammation in my body. So by controlling the inflammation, as I said, you're controlling the uveitis, which was ideal. Yeah, at the age of 20, about in my 20s, I decided that I didn't want to be taking the meds that I was taking anymore. At that period of time, the methotrexate was actually making me quite sick. Getting it in by injection from my family doctor, and I was working at the time, and so I would go on Fridays and get the injection. Still on Monday, I would feel really, really rough, and the nausea made it extremely difficult to function. So I went off on my methotrexate, and I stopped going to my rheumatologist. The only thing that I stayed on was my Celebrex and my prednisolone eye drops. And inevitably, this led to a flare in my eyes. And it was extremely scary. I was immediately remorseful for what I had done, because it took me right back to being, 11 and 12 years old again, and not being able to see because things just got so blurry again. It was like that gel just went over my eyes. And because of this, I was left with, in my left eye, a constantly blurry spot. It's the way I describe that is it's like when you look at the sun for too long and then you look away and you have that orb that's left in your eye. I have that all the time now, and that is a result of scarring in my left eye. So that, yes, self-induced, yes, if I could go back and change it, I would, because now it's forever. It will always be there, and it took more of my vision away. So I have, in my right eye, I have a blurry line that goes right through the center of my vision, completely, the entire field of vision. I have this blurry line which has left me legally blind, and that was from the scarring that occurred when I was a child during those glaucoma attacks. In the left eye, as I said, I have that swirling orb, so it very much impedes my vision. I take prednisolone eye drops twice a day. My uveitis is extremely, extremely calm because of the Humera and methotrexate that I'm on. Humera has been shown to be helpful with uveitis, and in my case, it definitely is helping. It's put my arthritis into remission, which, of course, as I say, has also had a direct effect on my eyes, a very positive effect, and I am ever, ever so grateful for that. I think, in the grand scheme of things, my uveitis has affected me the most. My arthritis, I've had that since I was 2. I know really no other way of life. But the uveitis, I would, if I could get rid of the damage that was done, if I could get rid of the issues that I've had with my eyes, I would most definitely. If there was a button that I could push that would allow me to have perfect vision, I would definitely do that. I think that's why it's so important for me to share my story with people, is because I want them to know that this can happen. Don't, live in fear constantly that it could happen, but be proactive and see your ophthalmologist, at the very least see your optometrist regularly.